Every single day, so many of us carry an overwhelming heaviness in our hearts. Completely exhausted by the relentless demands of work, complex human relationships, and the deep, unsettling anxieties about what the future might hold. From the very moment we open our eyes in the morning, our minds become instantly flooded with an endless checklist of things we have to do, lingering regrets over past mistakes, and a paralyzed dread of things that have not even happened yet, leaving absolutely no room for our minds to simply rest or breathe. We spend our lives desperately fighting to somehow change or fix the visible reality right in front of us, allowing ourselves to be swept away on a constant emotional roller coaster by the environment around us or the careless words of other people, until we are left completely drained. We tremble with fear that a single bad mood from a supervisor will ruin our professional standing, and we lose sleep at night, agonizing over minor misunderstandings with those we care about most. In the midst of this endless, exhausting cycle, we unknowingly deplete our vital mental energy day after day. Yet, no matter how fiercely we try to control or manipulate this outer world, the root cause of our deep suffering remains entirely untouched and unresolved. The profound truth is that the genuine source of our pain does not lie within the external events themselves, but rather inside the very framework of our own minds, and how we choose to perceive those events. More than 2,500 years ago, the timeless teachings of the Buddha brilliantly unraveled this mystery, illuminating precisely how our inner mind actively constructs our outer reality. When we finally awaken to the realization that our inner state of being and our habitual thought patterns are the exact forces that dictate the reality we experience, the bleak scenery before our eyes begins to transform in the most dramatic way imaginable. Today, we will explore this profound spiritual wisdom that our thoughts always come first, and reality merely follows, unpacking the intricate mechanics of the mind, so we can completely lift that heavy burden from your chest, and restore a lasting sense of gentle peace, clarity, and fulfillment to your everyday life. To truly understand this, let us journey back to ancient India, to a small, dusty village nestled within a harsh, arid landscape, where the unyielding rays of a fierce sun beat down upon the parched earth, and where a young man named Chandra lived in a state of constant, bitter dissatisfaction. Chandra was an exceptionally hard-working and honest farmer, who woke up earlier than anyone else to till his fields. Yet his inner world was a raging furnace of impatience, resentment, and deep-seated anger. No matter how much sweat he poured into his labor, his crops never seemed to yield enough. The local villagers never gave his tireless efforts the respect or validation he felt he rightfully deserved, and his financial hardships never seemed to ease, leading him to complain bitterly and sigh in deep frustration, day after day, to anyone who would listen. Through his eyes, the world was an inherently unfair, cruel, and deceptive trap, designed specifically to make him suffer at every turn. One afternoon, a rumor reached the village that a deeply revered wise old master, celebrated for his profound spiritual insight, had come to rest in a quiet, shaded forest just a short distance away. Desperate to find a way to break free from his exhausting circumstances, and hoping to receive a magical solution to alter his harsh reality. Chandra set off toward the forest, his footsteps heavy with a volatile mix of built-up anger and sheer fatigue. Beneath the expansive shade of a massive, ancient tree, the old master sat in profound meditation, and as Chandra approached with loud, aggressive strides that crunched heavily upon the dry leaves, the master opened his eyes, welcoming the troubled young man, with a gaze that seemed to see through everything, yet remained filled with absolute serenity. The moment Chandra sat down before him, the dam broke, and his accumulated misery came, pouring out in a torrential flood of grievances. He spoke with intense, biting words about how terribly unfair the weather patterns were to his fields, completely destroying his hard work. How calculated and malicious the villagers were in isolating and undermining him, and how he had simply been cursed from birth to live an unfortunate life under an unlucky star. Throughout this entire intense outburst, the wise master never once interrupted, nor did he offer a single word of judgment, choosing instead to simply nod with deep empathy, listening intently, as if gently cradling the profound pain buried deep within Chandra's heart, until the young man had completely emptied his soul, and sat staring at the ground in breathless silence. Once Chandra had finally finished speaking, his chest heaving as he tried to catch his breath in the quiet forest, the wise master reached down and gently picked up an old, heavily soiled piece of cloth that lay discarded in the dirt at their feet, its original color completely obscured by layers of filth. Holding it up, the master looked at Chandra, and asked him what color he perceived the fabric to be. Feeling quite confused and somewhat irritated by such a seemingly trivial question asked so abruptly, Chandra sighed and replied with a sharp tone that it looked like nothing more than a dull, worthless, and filthy gray. Without saying another word, the master pulled a small clay flask filled with pure, crystal-clear water from his robes, and began to meticulously and patiently wash the soiled cloth, right before the young man's eyes. As the thick layers of mud were gently rinsed away, the original, brilliantly vibrant blue of the fabric began to emerge, radiant and completely unblemished underneath the dirt. The wise master fixed his gentle, yet piercing eyes directly onto Chandra and spoke in a soft, resonant voice, explaining that the world Chandra was looking at was exactly like that mud-stained cloth. The master revealed that because Chandra carried the thick mud of anger, resentment, and blame within his own heart, he was inadvertently painting his entire external reality in those exact shades of filthy gray. Reality itself is completely neutral, existing exactly as it is without any inherent malice. And it is our own internal thoughts, and nothing else, that project meaning onto it and manufacture the suffering we feel. The master then beautifully explained the spiritual law of cause and effect, illustrating that our thoughts are always the primary seed, and the reality we experience is merely the fruit that blossoms afterward. If a person's mind is chronically consumed by lack and dissatisfaction, they will inevitably find a reason to complain, even in the midst of the most magnificent blessings. But if a person's mind is truly anchored in peace and clarity, they will naturally uncover grace and opportunity, even within the most severe hardships. The moment those profound words resonated through the quiet forest air, an inexplicable, ground-shifting shockwave passed through Chandra's entire being. Up until that exact second, he had believed with absolute, unquestioning certainty that his deep misery was entirely the fault of his brutal environment and the toxic people around him. After bowing deeply to the master to express his profound gratitude, Chandra began his walk back to the village, his mind enveloped in a rare, deeply comforting stillness that he had never experienced in his entire life. The very next morning, he embarked on a quiet, disciplined journey of self-discovery deep within his own consciousness. As he walked along the familiar dirt path toward his farming fields, he made a conscious decision to become an exceptionally watchful observer of the internal monologue running through his head. To his utter astonishment, he realized that he was generating an unbroken, thunderous stream of negative thoughts without even realizing it. If the sun rose brightly, he immediately cursed the unbearable heat. If a breeze blew, he worried obsessively that it would ruin his fragile crops. And whenever he passed a neighbor, he instantly assumed their neutral facial expressions meant they were secretly looking down on him or mocking him. It became undeniably clear that his own habitual thought patterns were the primary architect, creating the living hell he was experiencing every single day. Committed to putting the master's wisdom into practice, Chandra began to actively shift his awareness. Whenever a thought of anger or complaint started to surface, he would catch himself, gently acknowledging that he was trying to paint his world gray again, and softly let the thought go. Instead, he consciously redirected his attention toward the small blessings that were already present, such as the life-sustaining coolness of the water that quenched his thirst, or the remarkable resilience of the crops that managed to grow despite the dry soil. As the days blended into a week, and that week turned into several, a powerful and undeniable transformation took root deep within Chandra's soul. The sharp, prickly irritability and constant urgency that had once consumed his personality completely vanished, replaced by an expansive, tranquil spaciousness within his chest. Then, something truly miraculous began to occur. As his internal world shifted into alignment, his external reality began to transform around him, like a perfect reflection in a mirror. Because Chandra now walked through the village with a genuinely serene expression, offering warm smiles and sincere words of appreciation to those he encountered. The villagers, who he once thought were cold and hostile, began to approach him with genuine warmth and kindness. One morning, an elderly farmer from the neighboring field walked over completely on his own accord, and generously offered to share a surplus of high-quality seeds with him. A few days later, during a local community meeting, the village elders listened to Chandra's suggestions with profound respect, openly praising his insight and character. The weather patterns had not suddenly changed, and the physical challenges of farming remained. But because Chandra had entirely revolutionized his inner thoughts, the harsh, unforgiving world he once lived in was completely overridden by a brand new reality filled with deep harmony, human connection, and abundance. He had proven to himself, through direct personal experience, the absolute truth that the mind precedes everything, and fundamentally shapes the world we inhabit. In our modern lives, so many of us are trapped in the exact same psychological illusion. That Chandra was constantly suffering within the cages of our own making. We find ourselves endlessly caught up in fierce competition at work, constantly comparing ourselves to the glamorous, curated lifestyles of others we see on social media, which breeds a perpetual sense of inadequacy and restless anxiety. We find ourselves deeply wounded by a thoughtless comment from a boss, intensely irritated by the attitudes of our coworkers, and losing sleep over a mountain of fears regarding our financial security and personal health. In the midst of these heavy pressures, we fall into the dangerous trap of believing that we can absolutely never be happy or at peace until every single one of these external problems is completely and perfectly resolved, and until everyone around us behaves exactly as we want them to. We tell ourselves that we are down and depressed, simply because someone else failed to recognize our worth, or that we cannot have hope for our future because the world is unstable. Viewing ourselves as helpless victims, whose emotions are entirely dictated by whatever is happening around us. However, the core doctrines of Buddhism, such as the profound philosophy of consciousness only, which states that all things are manifestations of the mind, and the wisdom of dependent origination, which teaches that all phenomena arise in dependence upon multiple causes and conditions, show us that this cause and effect relationship is actually completely reversed. Our complex brains and minds do not perceive the objective world exactly as it is, rather, they actively construct a highly subjective version of reality through a unique filter composed of our past traumas, societal conditioning, deep-seated fears, and unfulfilled desires. This means that the outer reality we experience every single day is essentially nothing more than a giant movie screen onto which our inner mind is constantly projecting its contents. If you allow your mind to continuously marinate in subconscious scripts that say, you are unloved, that you are destined to fail, or that nobody will ever truly understand you, your brain will automatically scan your environment to find specific evidence to validate those exact negative beliefs. As a direct result, your anxieties become even more deeply entrenched. And that fearful, defensive state of mind goes on to create even more chaotic and stressful situations, trapping you in a seemingly endless, agonizing cycle of suffering. In Buddhist philosophy, this blind spot is referred to as spiritual ignorance, the fundamental lack of awareness regarding the true nature of reality, which is recognized as the ultimate source of all human misery. If we genuinely want to break free from this exhausting cycle, we must boldly halt our frantic, aggressive attempts to force the external world to change, and instead turn our gaze inward to examine the true nature of our thoughts. Embracing the logical truth that our inner thoughts create our outer reality, rather than the other way around, is the single most empowering realization you can have, because it instantly places the steering wheel of your life back into your own hands. Understanding this teaching means transforming from a helpless entity, tossed around by the external world, into an active, sovereign creator of your own life, through the power of your inner consciousness. So how can we practically take this profound, ancient wisdom and seamlessly integrate it into the fast-paced, demanding structure of our modern daily lives? across various real-world situations? To achieve this, we can follow several deeply transformative steps that allow us to actively practice this truth. The first and most vital practice is to become a completely non-judgmental observer of your own mind, which is the cultivation of mindfulness, known in the Eightfold Path as right mindfulness. Every day, commit to carving out just a few quiet minutes, whether during your morning commute, right before you sit down at your work desk, or in the stillness of the evening, to straighten your posture, settle your breathing, and watch the stream of words, phrases, and vivid mental images flowing through your head, observing them as if you were a detached spectator watching a play. Most people who try this are absolutely stunned to discover the sheer volume of negative, self-critical, and judgmental commentary they subconsciously whisper to themselves throughout the day. Realizing how quickly thoughts like "why does this always happen to me?" or "I can't stand how that person talks" arise automatically. The absolute golden rule during this exercise is to never judge, criticize, or scold yourself for having these negative thoughts. Simply maintain a gentle awareness, telling yourself that you notice a wave of anxiety rising, or that you are currently generating a thought of frustration towards someone. And let that be enough. Because the moment you simply notice a thought without reacting to it, you instantly create a beautiful, liberating space between that thought and your true self, causing its emotional grip over you to completely evaporate, and leaving your mind beautifully calm. Building upon this foundation, the next step is to actively practice the conscious redirection of your thoughts, which is the most powerful way to utilize this universal law of the mind. Every single morning, before you even pull yourself out of bed or look at your phone, choose to intentionally set the emotional and mental blueprint for your entire day ahead, creating a conscious setup for your soul. Explicitly declare to yourself that no matter what unexpected chaos, difficult deadlines, or challenging interactions arise today, you choose to meet them with a deeply grounded, patient, and compassionate heart, and that you will actively look for small expressions of goodness, kindness, and beauty in the world. When a sudden crisis occurs at work, or you have to interact with an incredibly difficult individual, take a slow, deep breath, exhale fully, and consciously anchor yourself back into the mental blueprint you chose that morning. Instead of automatically reacting with defensiveness, anger, or despair, you are exercising your sovereignty to choose your inner state first, which gradually builds an unshakable, bulletproof inner peace that absolutely no external event can disrupt. To elevate this daily practice even further and ground it deeply into your life, it is highly recommended to weave a dedicated meditation of gratitude into your evening routine. As we lay our heads on the pillow at night, our brains naturally tend to replay all the stressful things that went wrong, the tasks we failed to accomplish, or the sharp words someone said to us, which unfortunately primes our minds to paint the next morning in those same gray colors. To counteract this, spend the final minutes of your day intentionally flooding your awareness with the small blessings you experienced over the past 16 hours. Thinking of the comforting taste of your lunch, the warm smile a colleague returned when you said hello, or simply the fact that you made it through another day safely. By falling asleep with a heart filled with genuine appreciation, you profoundly reprogram your subconscious mind, ensuring that when you wake up, the reality that unfolds before you will be beautifully aligned with harmony, unexpected joy, and deep peace, proving that, though these daily habits might seem remarkably simple on the surface, consistency will completely clarify the filters of your mind, dramatically shifting how you move through the world, and making your life exceptionally easier to live. For a long time, you may have felt like a helpless boat, tossed around by the violent, unpredictable, and harsh waves of the external world, living as a servant to your environment and losing all your mental spaciousness. But as the timeless wisdom of the Buddha reminds us, the ultimate source of all creation, and the power to shape your world, resides entirely within the sanctuary of your own mind. No matter where you are or what you are facing, your thoughts are always the primary cause, and your reality is the inevitable effect. There is no need to desperately rush around, trying to force the outer world to change. Because when you make the conscious choice to cultivate a mind that is thoroughly anchored in serenity, deep compassion, and clear wisdom, your external experience will naturally and surely transform in response. You will discover an inexhaustible reservoir of strength rising from within, allowing you to rise above any crisis, adapt to unexpected changes, and transform every single obstacle into fuel for your personal growth. Starting from this very moment, let go of the thick mud of past regrets and the heavy, empty illusions of future anxieties, and allow your natural, pristine awareness to beautifully rewrite the story of your life. As long as you courageously master your inner mind, and intentionally choose thoughts of warmth, compassion, and light, your path will inevitably blossom into a deeply peaceful, radiant, and profoundly fulfilling reality. This is not a superficial comfort granted to you by someone else, but a genuine, unshakable happiness that you have the absolute power to generate from within your own soul. May your journey ahead always be enveloped in this deep, inner peace and radiant joy.
If this story resonated with you and provided some insights or learning, I'd be delighted if you could press the like button. Also, if you subscribe to the channel, I'll be able to continue sharing various life wisdom and lessons with you. Please share your experiences and thoughts in the comments section as well. Each person's experience becomes valuable learning for other viewers. Thank you so much for watching this video to the end today. I look forward to meeting you all again in the next video.